It is a moment of great sadness for us to see what's going on in the world, but it's really the purpose of our organizations is to encourage the kind of dialogue, share experiences and understand how we can work together to improve understanding across organizations, across communities, across countries. I'm Karen Maxwell. I'm part of the UK Women of Faith Network. We have three wonderful women from very different organizations with different experiences. The first guest that I'm going to introduce is Lama Zangmo. And I have a short bio that I will read and hope that I cover all the important facts and information, but I'm sure you can fill in some others. And I'm going to have a short conversation because I think your experiences, particularly in your spiritual journey, I'm sure is something that people will be very interested to understand more about. So originally from Denmark, Lama Zangmo first became a practicing Buddhist in 1977 after visiting the Samye Ling monastery in Scotland. Having received teachings from many respected lamas, including the 16th Karmapa, she was inspired to undertake a 4-year closed retreat in 1984, during which time she became ordained as a Buddhist nun. 2 further retreats followed, bringing the total number of years Lama Zangmo spent in retreat to 11.5. During the latter part of this time, Lama Zangmo served as the retreat teacher. When the Kagyu Samye Dzong, I probably haven't pronounced that correctly, so help me with that, when that opened in London in 1998, she was asked to run the centre. The centre has flourished under her guidance and has established itself as a very important centre in the capital for Buddhist teachings, for meditation and related activities. The centre welcomes people of all faiths and of none. In recognition of her tireless and joyful service to the Tibetan Buddhist teachings and helping others, she became the first person in the UK to be granted the title of Lama in an amazing, heartwarming ceremony. This is a very special privilege, I understand. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that in a moment. So Lama Zangmo, may I first of all welcome you, and I'd just like to really understand a little bit more about your what drew you to become a Buddhist nun, because it is unusual. It's probably something that not many of us have direct experience of.
So in terms of your question of becoming a nun, to be honest with you, I never imagined myself becoming a nun when I entered the Buddhist path. It was the furthest thing from my mind. So I came to Samye Ling. I was 25 years old at that time, and I just knew I wanted to study the Buddhist teachings because they made so much sense to me. It was so much sanity in the teachings that I found. I felt I could understand what they were talking about, and I felt that these teachings could really benefit me. So I came to Samye Ling as a layperson, and as I said, never really thought of becoming a nun. And then the opportunity in Samye Ling arose of this first 4-year retreat that Akong Rinpoche started in Scotland. And I joined the retreat. And 1 year into the retreat, I suppose as a result of the practice and all the contemplation that we did, it became clear to me that was what I wanted to do. And just to explain a little bit, it was actually not a matter of making a decision for me. It was not something like you could say, oh, am I going to become a nun? Or am I going to become a lawyer? Or am I going to become a nurse, a doctor? It was a matter of, for me, it felt like I was in a tunnel and I'm standing at this point in the tunnel, and I have a choice of either staying where I am or moving forward or going back. And moving forward was simply becoming a nun. There was no other path for me, because you don't want to go backwards. You don't want to stay where you are in terms of your own development. So I'm talking about your mental development or your spiritual path. So it did not feel like a choice. It felt like that was simply my path. That's maybe the only way I can explain it.
I think that's very clear. I like the way you talk about moving forward. I think we would understand that. I think there is that sometimes you connect with things, you can't really necessarily explain them, but and what you're saying is that that's kind of what happened for you. And I love the way you say there wasn't a choice. It was a sort of emergence. So that's very interesting. I think the other one of the other questions I'd like to sort of ask you about was you spent 11 and a half years, I believe, in retreats. I'd be interested to know what did you find to be the most challenging and on the other side, the most uplifting aspects of being on retreat?
Mm-hmm. In some way, I would say that the things that were challenging were also the things that were uplifting, because in retreat, in the way that I think, Buddhism is not the only tradition and religion that has retreats, but like in Christianity and other traditions, you also do retreats, and retreat is an opportunity to deepen your spiritual path and your emergence, your engagement with your faith. And in that process, challenges arise, but then overcoming those challenges is what becomes the joys and the strength. So in terms of the Buddhist path, it's very inwards looking when you are in retreat, but inwards looking for the purpose of being able to engage outwardly. It's not simply sort of navel gazing for the sake of sitting and looking at your own mind just for the purpose of that. It is if you're trying to train your mind so that you can be a benefit to others in the future, so you can engage outwardly. And in that process of looking inwards at your own mind, you see your own weaknesses, you see your own difficulties. You have to come face to face with whatever obstacles arise in that process, and dealing with those obstacles is the path, really. And as you work through those obstacles, they become your strength. It's like you're transforming your difficulties. So in a sense, that becomes the joys of the path, you could say.
It is, and I'm sure from the very little I understand, talking to some friends who are also Buddhists, I think the way you describe that learning how to overcome obstacles and turning those make you stronger and those bring you joy by turning those around. It's very, very warming to hear that. Again, apologies if because I don't understand enough about the if you like the process of retreat. Are you helped by? Are you sort of mentored by people on your during that time?
Very much so. Yes, you have a retreat master.
Yep.
Who is someone with experience who guides you in the retreat. And that you can, you get teachings during the retreat. You're not completely on your own. They are actually group retreats. So there's a lot of shared experience as well. There is communal practices. But a lot of the time you are on your own in your own sort of quarters, your own room. But there is definitely guidance. And I would say for those people who are not so familiar with the Buddhist path, a lot of it is about learning to let go of the past, for example. Like many people carry strong baggage one way or another. And so a lot of the process of meditation, at least in the beginning, is learning to let go of thoughts, not to solidify the past, not to worry about the future, sort of having a more flexible approach to our way of thinking is part of the training.
Yeah, I can see how, I mean, that it's such a sort of a relevant and potentially important, useful for us all to develop some of those abilities. I think I'm sure we see a lot about mental health, particularly in our young people, and I'm kind of interested. At the centre, are you finding that you are, if you like, teaching people to acquire some of those skills to be able to operate in a different way, to engage in a different way?
Definitely. And as you probably are aware, all the more secular mindfulness courses that are now very popular, they really arise out of Buddhism.
Yeah.
And the basic steps of Buddhism is learning, becoming more familiar with the process of the mind. It is quite different in that way from other faiths, in that it is not based on a belief in an external God, but there is still strong emphasis on faith in Buddhism. Maybe more like faith in our own potential, you could say, in our potential for change, and in our own inner purity that is seen as being obscured by a lot of sort of temporary obscurations.
Right.
And the process of meditation is allowing that to come out.
Yes.
But yes, definitely in terms of training and courses, I would say that meditation can help anyone free themselves from depression or anxiety or stress or some of the mental health problems that we see a lot in the West. Is a lot of it comes from a wrong way of thinking.
Yes, and I think us being maybe bombarded or overwhelmed by sort of information coming from reactions and people's behavior from all over. So we are kind of, I think a lot of young people are overwhelmed by that, and it does feel like that that approach that you were talking about, and that journey could be very powerful for a lot of people, whether they take it formally as part of a becoming a Buddhist, or even just learning from those skills. So it must be a wonderful opportunity to be working with people and helping them on that journey.
Yes, you're right, because there's so much external stimulus, in terms of just like young people who are on social media a lot, or living in big cities, all the demands on people's lives in terms of their social lives, their family lives, their responsibilities, education, etc. So learning through mindfulness to deal with the external triggers, all these external input sense triggers, that's very, very important, and can be very, very helpful for anyone really. You don't have to be a Buddhist to meditate. You don't have to be a Buddhist to practice mindfulness. You don't have to be you don't have to be an atheist either. You can practice mindfulness even though you are a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian, because some of the techniques are not especially Buddhist, but some of the techniques are Buddhist. So there's so many different types of methods. It's said that the Buddha taught 84,000 different types of teachings, because there's so many different mindsets as well. So we need many different approaches. And the basic basic approach in meditation is mindfulness and awareness and learning to let go of thoughts. And then you have techniques where you actually learn a technique and you practice that technique to train the mind.
And I think that is, for me, is a really important learning. Is that actually it's not something you can just, oh, I'm going to go and do my mindfulness, or I'm going to go and, you have to kind of learn how to get yourself into that, the right space for that.
Yes.
I certainly know in terms of my limited religious practice, I'm a Jew by birth, and I grew up in a more orthodox, which for me was a more ritualized form of Judaism, although I'm now a member of the liberal synagogue. And I have to say the part of the service that I enjoy the most is the silent prayer, the quiet time, and particularly on a Friday night, we there's probably a bit more of that, and that's the joy on a Friday night after the working week, and we light candles and we have some quiet moments. And sometimes it seems strange to me that we have to be given permission to do that, but maybe that is something we need to think about. How do we help people to build that quiet time into their lives?
To build some inner confidence in how our mind works is really important, and that's something that's very ignored in the West. It's now becoming more acknowledged, but the fact that we spend so much time in general education, we are very happy to spend 7 years to become a doctor or a dentist or whatever it takes, or an artist, or playing a piano. We take a lot of time and a lot of exercise, including doing the scales every day. But when it comes to our mental activity, our emotions, we're actually quite unsure. And of course, there's nothing tangible there to really look at. But there is ways to train the mind and to change our habits and our ways of thinking, and to understand how the mind works and how the emotions arise, and that it is possible for us to develop positive, good habits, positive ways of thinking, positive emotions, rather than negative, painful and harmful emotions. And it's something we can learn. So that's a very good message, good positive news, that we can learn. We are not born with this. Say if somebody's a very depressed person, or very anxious person, or very uptight person, this is something we can change.
Yes. That's a very important message. I guess the final area that I would like to ask you about is the title of Lama is a very special gift. Can you explain to us how and why that was conferred upon you?
Sure. So the title of Lama is really given to someone who is it's like a conferral of a title of teacher, you could say, within Buddhism, by your own teacher. So you're given that permission to pass on the teachings by your teacher, and that there's a ceremony for that. And not everyone is able to give someone else a title. So the person who gives you the title have had permission from their teacher. It's a sort of lineage permission. And in our sort of school, like in Samye, Akong Rinpoche, who was a refugee, Tibetan refugee, and his brother, our abbot now, Lama Yeshe-Losal Rinpoche, they were both refugees, and coming from Tibet, where of course Buddhism was almost destroyed, the monasteries were destroyed, and they left the country in the 50s and came to India as refugees, to UK. And their whole life's focus has been to preserve the teachings, to make sure they don't get lost. And in that process, they've started Samye and all the different centers, such as our London center, and we have centers in other cities as well. and as part of that is training people, because of course it's not only buildings, but it is also it is people who have to carry the teachings on. And so in that process they felt that they wanted to make some people within who have trained and who've studied and who have practiced, so spent years in retreat and who were monks and nuns, to give them that title of Lama. And that happened to us in 2001. So yeah, I don't know what else really to say about it, but
okay, well, no,
yes, maybe what's important in this context is that 3 of the 4 people who've been given the title of Lamas, they're women.
Oh, they are, right. That was going to be my final question, because obviously for us, many of us are parts of faith organizations where women don't tend to take the leadership roles, if you like, the influential roles, and obviously we're working hard to change that. But it's wonderful to hear. So have those have all happened in the last, what you're saying, 20 years?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important within, in the West. I think it's important to also for women here in the West to see and to be able to meet female teachers. I think that's really healthy, and also to see that, within Buddhism this is happening, this is possible. And I can certainly say within Samye there's no difference whether you are male or female, monks or nuns, lay people, male or female. Everyone receives the same teachings and the same situation.
Well, that's a very important lesson and example for us as well, because I think many of us would recognize that some of the prejudices against women and suppression of women permeates a lot of society, and it's wonderful to hear that within the Buddhist community that is not the case. So